Good evening and welcome once again to another episode of Bantaba. I am Christina, your anchor. A brief recap on what we discussed last week. Last week, on previous episode, we discussed about the history of democracy and how it has helped us and how it hasn't helped us. We also discussed the different and possible governance systems that are and could be in Africa. And all these were made possible by none other than our vibrant guests. Today, we have brought to you some guests that will discuss about the wonderful topic we have in store. I can promise you that nothing but wisdom, intelligence, and sagacity will be displayed on this show today, and I hope you're ready for it. Once again, we have brought vibrant and educated intellect from the Far Eastern Federal University to enlighten us today. These individuals are here today to show us what they have made and how they have been able to excel in their respective discipline. Today, they have brought to us the knowledge they have acquired over the course of their study and are ready to impart us. We can't wait to see what they have in store for us. As much as I would like to go on and on about how great and remarkable the speakers are, I'm afraid getting into the topic and dissecting it will do justice to that. I am pleased to announce our first guest from Ghana, a master's student of molecular and cell biology and an assistant lecturer, Hanif.
Hello.
Also from Nigeria, a student of Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery and the Vice President of the Association of African Students in Vladivostok, Elijah.
Thank you.
From Nigeria, a PhD student of cell biology, Adama.
Thank you.
Welcome on the show once again. We appreciate you. A brief intro of the topic for today. On today's episode, we will be discussing the development of science and technology, gaps and prospects in Africa. According to Oxford reference, science encompasses the systemic study of the structure and behavior of the physical natural world through observation and experiment, and technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. Science and technology also has been defined as a field that accesses the creation, development, and its consequences. In a journal article published by Belfast Center in 1994, Harvey Brooks described the relationship between science and technology and how each are highly interdependent but distinct. He further explained how science contributes to technology and how technology impacts science. Without further ado, we will now hear from our speakers. I would like to throw the first question just to lay the groundwork. What is the relationship between science and technology and how are they interdependent? Elijah, if you could please answer the question.
All right. Yeah. So thank you so much for that question. Yeah. So actually, just like you rightly said, science is a study of everything around us. It's a study of nature, the study of everything surrounding humanity. And then technology, this is the application of that scientific knowledge. So your question is, how do they relate, right? How are they intertwined? I'd like to say science is like the forerunner. Science does the dirty work and then technology now comes into play. So for example, many years ago, electricity was discovered. The light bulb was not created, was not invented before electricity. So the discovery of electricity is like a scientific, is that science, right? So when electricity is discovered, it now gives room for technology to now find expression. So we now have like the light bulb, we have cell phones and other things coming up as a result of that scientific discovery. So science and technology, they work hand in hand. Science lays the way, like it paves the way for technology to thrive. And actually, at some point, science still now depends on technology. For example, we have the microscope, right? The microscope was invented as a result of scientific discoveries and all of that. But now, with the use of that microscope, which is a technological tool, we're now able to now still discover, like study science more. So you see, like science led to technology, and then now with the technological tools we have, we still now use it to study science more. So I think that's the relationship between it.
Thank you very much. So according to you, we can say science lays the groundwork and technology is like the practical aspect.
Yeah,
So we use technology based on what we got from science.
that's right.
Thank you very much. I think it's well explained and it's clear to everyone. So we know that Africa has the world's highest record of human technological achievement. And there have been proofs of tool development and production by our ancestors. Like for instance, in Egypt in ancient times, there were proofs about making inscriptions on woods, and those proofs were discovered. So, what role did Africa play in the advancement of technology in its early stages? And if this question will be directed to you, what do you think the role of Africa is or was in the advancement of technology in this modern world?
Okay. I would say a very big good evening and warm felicitations of the season to everyone and to everyone equally joining online. I would start from this dimension. So just as he mentioned and just as you equally alluded to, that if you actually look at history, you would realize that most of the technological advancements that we have, and I would probably make some few examples, actually started from Africa. They all started from Africa, but we probably had not taken it in other dimensions of making a lot of investment to make this even more bigger. Now, I would speak about the issue of astronomy, for instance. So, looking at the ancient Egyptians, they made a lot of strides in that particular area. We can equally talk about the Malian Empire, okay? They equally made a lot of strides in this particular area. Now, thankful to them, today we're able to make and understand a lot of issues with regards to the meteorological science. So we're able to understand what is going to happen. We're able to predict to some extent, what is actually coming. And this is equally intertwined with the issues of mathematics. I mean, we know that the Eurobase as well equally had some numeracy and some numbering system, which was invented by the Eurobase. We know equally the Egyptians made a lot of strides in the area of algebra, in the area of geometry, to make a lot of calculations as well. They equally even made, some very pronounced, discoveries in this particular area, particularly in physics and science. They made a lot of, And now, the issues of meteorology cannot do without mathematics as well. So you see how these things that started long ago actually had led to this particular development in this particular area. And now even to talk about how we can equally model some scientific knowledge to try to help in the issue with regards to global warming. You see, so these are very important, and these things started long before today. But probably we, like I said, did not, churn a lot of attention, and we did not put a lot of energy and investment in this particular area. And it seems that we have, in one way or the other, probably, struggling a bit in this endeavor of trying to put in, things with regards to technology. But all these things started from here. Probably I would lay another example to this particular discussion or topic. Now, the ancient Malians as well also had some technologies with regards to furnace. So in the area of blacksmithing, in the area of dealing with minerals, we as Africans had systems that was able to produce heat that's higher, even to the degree of about 1800, which the ancient Romans alluded to, that that particular temperature of heat is quite even higher than what they could produce themselves. So these were there, as well as road technology. We had civil engineering technologies at the time, but it is not to that sort of advancement we have today. But we were the forerunners. We started this, and I think that we are not far behind, and probably in the course of the discussion, we would lay some other foundations as to how we can even get this better.
Thank you very much. I'll refer to what you mentioned about in ancient times, how the things we produced, things we developed went into dormancy because we didn't develop them further, we neglected them. So now when colonization came into play, we remember that the things we used, the industries, the advanced technologies we used then were brought by the white people. Now, after colonization, we gained independence. So, has there been any changes to what we gained from them, to what they brought to Africa? Have we in any way made a step to develop what they left for us, or they are still how they were?
I think that the scope is changed. That is very important to remark. And the other issue may also have to do with the fact that we had our own systems and we had our own culture, and the sort of technologies that we had at the time was okay for us. It was okay because, I mean, with farming, for instance, we had technologies which were put in place to farm, and agriculture was okay for us. We had our own systems and methods of breeding animals, and all these things were known. I mean, these are facts. We can go into documents and find out about these. But now the numbers are increasing. For instance, food security. How are we able to do this? Okay, so now we probably need to up our game a bit. We need to put in a lot of investment and try to look at as well global trends. Where do we find ourselves? And in the context of the African story, how do we make this even better to feed our people, to make sure that we have food available for ourselves? So this is one thing that I think that we probably need to up our game a bit. Yes, they came in with their systems, what actually worked for them, but not in the context that actually worked for us as Africans, because we have our own systems as well. And I think that, yes, there is a we can learn from one another, and that is another dimension that I think probably we can look at, because now data is showing that the North Africans are doing quite a lot, and we can, the African Union, we can have a lot of collaborations. And looking at the science, technological and innovation documents that were developed by the African Union, which is actually ending in next year, which is 2024. All these things are captured in there. So we need to up our game. We need to, look at greater collaborations to make this actually very great.
Thank you. Speaking about colonization, we can all agree that it brought us backwards, because we can see some countries that were colonized, we know where they are today, like how they developed over the years. But for Africa majorly, we can say colonization has done a bit of damage to the advancement of Africa. But we also have to look at it this way. India was also colonized. But look at India today. They are thriving, even though they are going to get there. But they were also colonized. So let's remove the fact that we were colonized, can we say that Africa could have done things on their own in terms of science and technology if we weren't colonized? I would like Adam to answer that question.
Well, so yeah, it is all known and agreed that colonization has drained Africa of its resources, both human and material resources. But the thing is, so after colonization, as you earlier said, India, for example, is now thriving. They're even the 5th largest economy now, and then they are one of the nuclear states. Yeah. Even though they have their own problems, of course, every country has its own. So the thing is, I think if we have to look at it at this angle, we can see that without colonization, maybe Africa might be better than now. Why? Because we already had kingdoms, and those kingdoms were really fully governed by Africans, and we were thriving and we had our economic systems were really good, and then we had our science, technology, even universities, even before the colonial masters came to Africa. The first university, for example, is in Morocco, was in Morocco, and then the second university, the largest university, was Azhar University, even before Oxford. You understand? So it means that Africa would have, been bigger, than where we are now. But during colonization, you can see that they have drained the continent of its good people. For example, if you go and check the number of Nobel laureates in Africa, you will see that usually all these francophone laureates, they are now in France. They were just born in Africa. You see Algeria, you see, all these countries, but they are not in the country. In our countries, Nigeria, for example, any good doctor, you won't find him in the country. You understand? So the effect of colonization is we still feel the effect. You understand? And it's still continuing. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. Okay, I would give a very brief description about how or what the situation is between countries with the ability to develop nuclear weapon and nuclear power, and how the relationship is with countries that are not able to do this. According to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Article 4 or 5, each party to the treaty undertakes to take appropriate measures to ensure that, in accordance with this treaty, under appropriate international observation and through appropriate international procedures, potential benefits from any peaceful applications of nuclear explosions will be made available to non-nuclear weapon states party to the treaty on a non-discriminating basis. I'll just make it a description. So, Russia, for example, they have the ability to make nuclear power. United States of America, they have the same ability. But for developing countries like Nigeria or African countries in general, or some Asian countries who are not in the place to develop this nuclear power, there was actually a treaty, right, to just like they are able to get benefit from nuclear power countries that can develop this nuclear power without discrimination and at a very affordable price. So, but this doesn't happen. This treaty was meant for it to happen, but it doesn't happen. So my question now is, has there been enough technology sharing? Like, in your opinion, do you think there has been enough technology sharing among African countries? Let's even put aside the fact that African countries can go to the other countries that are able to build this power. Among African countries themselves, has there been any technology sharing? If there is, or if there has been, how has it helped the other African countries? Maybe Anif would be able to answer the question.
Okay, so in this particular area, if probably we may talk about some other areas veering away from security as a core subject, then probably we can have some possible example. But in the area of security and sharing security technologies, no. I don't think this is happening in its current state, the way it is. I don't think, no. But this is possible for us as a continent to pick up this matter as serious as it is, because in my own personal experience, what I've also seen is any country that is able to start building its own personal security to protect itself very well, it's able to gain some level of control of its own economy. But once you do not have this, you continue to stay where you are because you are not a threat to anybody. But once you're able to do this, you now are seen as, to some extent, as a level of a threat. And probably we are discussing Africa, but maybe I'll make this as an example to buttress my point. Look at Iran, for instance, and what is going on over there now. Okay, there are some, and we all know that because of these, some people do not want them to do it because they know once it is done, they equally become a threat. So these things are going on. But in other areas like agriculture, for instance, I know between Ghana and Nigeria, there are some collaborations that are ongoing to, make both sectors in agriculture work better. And I think that the African Union can exploit some of these even much better to, bring all of us up to that level where we can, and equally through that continental free trade system, we can do this to shore up our economy and, make some monies together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would like to add to what you said as well. Actually, you asked about if there's a meaningful or reasonable cooperation between African countries and all of these things. First, I'd like to say there's a great innovation divide between some African countries and even Africa and the outside world. And it's quite unfortunate because in as much as some of these documents are there, our countries seems not to be governed just based on morality or based on agreement and all of that. It's based on expediency. There's this quote I read somewhere and it says, you are not truly powerful if you don't have in you inherently the capacity to cause evil or violence. Like you're just a weakling. So I think nobody is going to push for Africa, or nobody's going to push for our countries to attain that sovereign status. For example, we claim to be sovereign countries, but truly, if you look at it, are we truly sovereign? Because we're still depending on some other countries and all of this. And so I think, we need to look deep down into our countries and our systems and try to build what would be able to depend on our own. And also, for example, when you look at the way African countries operate, right, it's actually sad. I think it's also a question of what our leaders are doing. For example, they get to meet some of these Western leaders, they get to meet some of these other countries who we think that are doing well, and rather than thinking for the good of the general populace, like they try to see what would just benefit them personally. So I think, for example, if we're having meetings and all of this as leaders, as African leaders, they should try to see what would benefit the country and try to legislate or try to discuss and deliberate issues that would bring Africa together and would be for the common good of the people. So I think that's my own contribution. There's actually a great innovation divide even amongst African countries. Some countries seems to be doing better than the others. So we need to see how we can build partnership and then try to push our continent forward.
Thank you very much.
So the thing is, as the international people used to call it Global South. So Africa is part of the Global South League. And these treaties that you have mentioned, the non-proliferation and whatever, actually you see the world is bipolar. You're either here or there, you understand? So it is not really that countries abide by this rule. For example, we can say we would like this country A, to help us build a nuclear station, while we have a lot of loans from IMF, for example. Therefore, country B will say, no, we cannot fund your project. You understand? So it is not like this treaty is being followed or not. It is the issue of the bipolarity, which is affecting everything in the world nowadays. Secondly, in terms of collaboration, for example, between Africa, the knowledge sharing that you have mentioned. Of course, in Africa, we have a lot of policies for knowledge sharing. For example, if I send any person from Nigeria to South Africa, which a lot of Nigerians are going to South Africa to study, this is part of the knowledge and technology sharing. We have a lot of people who go to Ghana, for example, to study. It is part of the sharing. You understand? So we can't say that there is no technology sharing in Africa. Of course there is, but all African countries, the funding is still lacking. The policies, the government will. That's what we are lacking, not the sharing. I can go to your country, I can learn the same thing I can learn in my country. It doesn't make sense, right? I need to go there to upgrade, to get, higher or sophisticated technology, then come back to my country, benefit the people, and whatever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking on ancient tools and technologies, like Anif said, he mentioned ancient Egypt and blacksmith and so on. When it comes to modern technology, like automobiles, ICT, building of satellites, money making ways like Bitcoin, and the way people make money nowadays using coins and stuff and trading. Also in aviation area, has there been any developments like that in Africa? Because we can say that we did well in ancient times with our technology, but now technology is advancing. We have more stuff, we have more sophisticated and advanced stuff. We have smart devices, smart TVs, smart watches, to name a few. But is there something Africa is doing in this regard to join the race, or we are still where we are decades ago? Elijah?
Okay, yeah, so thank you once again for the question. I think actually Africa has made great progress in terms of technological strides and science development. First, I think in most African countries now, we have some technological plans. For example, in Nigeria, there's this automobile company, we all know Innocent, right? So they're making cars and they're producing African brands of cars and all of those things. And I think we need to come to a point where we are able to accept our own and see how we support it. So you still have, for example, some of our leaders, you still have some persons who are well-to-do and all of those things, who prefer to patronize maybe foreign brands and foreign goods rather than seeing how we can invest more into what we have at home and then seeing how we now build it to get to that world class where other people are. So I think here we're actually making great progress. And I think we talked about money and all of those things. Yeah. West Africa in particular, I think they're really doing well in fintech. As at last year, the fintech, particularly in Nigeria, I think it was worth over, it was getting close to $1 billion. So it's projected that by 2025, it's almost going to be around $15 billion. So I think, yeah, we have like the Flutter Wave, we have the InterSwitch, and then you can see that there's a proliferation of online banking system. We have the Kuda and all of these things. So I think, yeah, Africa actually, we're beginning to wake up to the call and we're beginning to not just lament about what colonialism has done to us and all of that, but really taking this thing on ourselves. And then, but I think, yeah, more still needs to be done. We have actually made some progress, but we still need to build on what we have. Thank you.
That's a very nice input. Thank you, Elijah. The next question relating to this question in particular, do we think there is something that led to the development of this technology in Africa? For instance, maybe there is a muse or an inspiration behind this. Maybe someone just woke up one day and decided to do something meaningful, something that would change Africa for good, or it was just spontaneous. And as the development of this technology, banking, for example, as you mentioned, or trading system, or I think we can say some African countries right now are trying to develop their aviation system. Can we say this technology has benefited us in any way? Mr. Adamo, what do you think about this?
So you see, if we talk of technology, we talk of something that happens in our day-to-day life. Okay, for example, I want to get Tesla, but I can't afford Tesla. Then, this happened in China actually. Then one day, I was in my bathroom, I was thinking, okay, why not to make something cheaper? Then I produced BYD, which is a brand in China, you understand, that sells more than Tesla. So, you see, in Africa, we can have access to some technologies, but sometimes they can be expensive. So we need to use our resources in order to get the same product. That's where many of our, our entrepreneurs come to the market. Okay, why not to make this? Because we have the abundance of resources, we have cheap labor, and we have the capacity. We can think. And nowadays, even our governments are really helping. They are giving grants, they are giving, these bank loans, SMEs, yeah, which is really important. And then I see that Africa is progressing, and we hope by the end of the millennium, we can catch up with the rest of the world. Yeah.
And on this particular matter, I think that there are lots of people who want to challenge the status quo. I mean, there are a lot of people who want to dare and have been daring the system. I mean, to bring up a lot of new technologies, new ideas, and innovations. But like he said, I think one thing that is lacking behind is the aspect of funding. So there could be some form of deliberate funding, okay, dedicated for these specific areas. That okay, if you're able to come up with an idea, we'll get someone to mentor you, someone to see you through for this particular idea to boom. And I think that is one step of doing that. The other step has to do with making sure that business can move to another country. Because as we all see, if you see some of these companies come to you and negotiate something, they tell you, okay, probably we're going to give you the loan, but our company is going to do the project. So that is also very important. We need to try to leverage, try to make some discussions and make opportunities for the upcoming business. And again, we need to create systems which probably could exempt, upcoming business from some, there should be taxation, but we could give them some tax holidays for a period of, time to get them to really build themselves well and get the business running. Because one thing is, we equally face issues, and I know probably you may come up with that. We equally face issues with employment, but people who are able to come up with some of these businesses are able to equally employ some people, and this also comes to help cut down on the issues of unemployment. So there needs to be a very strong collaborations between individuals and the government, make some of these monies available and help them. And that is one thing that I think we are failing, because people get some access to loans. I'm not saying we do not. In my country, for instance, people get some access to loans, but the systems that are in place are not really a favorable one for them to thrive. So they start a business and now they run into some level of insolvency because they cannot sustain due to the systems that they have. So I think that these things, are some of the loopholes we need to try to find some, solutions to make it even much better.
Okay, Mr. Admiral, you mentioned something about people trying to challenge the system and doing things with our resources, making sure we get what we want with our resources, because obviously we can't get things from the other countries because they're expensive. So when the people who challenge the system or how things are, how do they get this funding? And you've mentioned loan, but can we say everyone who has decided to challenge the system in the past, they did it just by getting loans, or there are other ways, other methods to get funding?
Well, it is the basic entrepreneurship course. There are so many ways you can start a business. For example, in my city, in Gombe, we have a man who has built a water stove, the stove that uses water, and he can cook everything he wants. You understand? Yeah, he was awarded honorary degree from my university. So you see, these kind of people, if the system is good, even with only that, you can have, you can generate income that can sustain the whole state. Yeah. So coming back to our discussion, some people get their funding from family members, and some people get their funding from small and medium enterprises, development agencies. Like in Nigeria, we have had a lot of these schemes, but unfortunately, sometimes the right people are not the ones who are giving the funding. You understand? So we can say that there is a lot to be done in that aspect to see that the right people are getting the funding. And then secondly, some of us, down in Africa, there we get our money from our families. Family, for example, you can sell your land, you can sell your cattle, and then you can start a business. This can be interesting, of course, because it is just you either succeed or the whole family go bankrupt. So it is kind of suicide mission. But yeah, some of people, you can see that at the end of the day they succeed, and then it is good for the whole family.
Thank you. This question would go to Elijah. For African countries, or within African countries, and if an African country decides to develop something today, something that would change Africa or the country itself, or if an African country decides to make something that would go global, right? It doesn't have to serve just Africans, of course, but something that would serve Africa primarily. Where do you think, or what countries do you think they should collaborate with? Of course, there are several countries African countries can collaborate with, but what is the price? That is what you check. You check if this can be affordable for the particular country. You check the pros and the cons. So what countries, maybe 3, do you think they can collaborate with?
Do you mean within the African continent or outside?
Within and outside. What countries do you have in mind? Because within African countries, of course, we have countries that are advanced in technology more than some. And in other countries outside Africa, we have countries that African countries can collaborate with. So from these countries, what countries can you suggest that African countries can collaborate with?
Okay, so first, looking within the African continent, I think there are quite a number of countries who have done really well in terms of science and technological development. And it's actually a question of how much these countries are investing into this area. It's actually really sad and unfortunate that most African countries invest less than 1% of their annual budget into funding science and technology. And you see, most of the countries that we now see as developed countries, they are investing sometimes above 3, 4, or 5% of their annual budget into funding science and technology. So you see, for example, Africa now, we are trying to meet up to the standards they've set already, and still they're investing more percentage of their annual budget. And then I think it's actually really sad. But however, there's little progress. Countries like South Africa, I think they actually increased their budget allocations into science and technology, and I think they're really doing well. And we have a couple of other countries from Northern Africa as well. For example, Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. You see that they're really doing well. So Africa as a whole can come together to partner more with these countries, and of course Nigeria as well, and Ghana. We have like these countries in West Africa that are spearheading the advancement and all of this, and so we can actually come together to see how we work towards taking Africa to that enviable height we truly want. And then looking outside Africa, I think there are some countries, of course, we have to look into partnering with them. I think was that Damu, he rightly said that it's not just about borrowing money from this country. That sometimes there are some terms and conditions underline those partnerships. So I think, yeah, we look really well to see which country really wants, well, of course we can't say any country wants the best exactly for us, but which conditions favors us the most, and then we try to now go with these countries. For example, we've had lots of partnerships with some Western countries in the past, and then we have lots of engagements we've had, right? But when you ask yourself, like, have all these engagements really advanced the African cause? Like, have all these engagements really pushed us? We've had relationships for over 60 years, and for me, I think it just seems to be hypocritical. It's just what's favoring them that they want. So I think, yeah, one country we can actually look into currently as we speak now, Russia is a big player in the technological sphere and all of these things. So I think, yeah, it's one country we can look up to in partnering with Russia, and I think they're really open to having more conversations, more discussions with Africa. Was it just a few months ago we had the Russia-Africa summit where Putin was there and some other African presidents and all of that. So I think, yeah, Russia is ready to cooperate, and then we see that our value system, it actually aligns more with our value systems as well. So there are no there are no, should I say, hidden agenda in the relationship. It's actually quite open. So I think here we can actually partner with Russia and any other country that is willing to partner with Africa, and then that the conditions will not choke us. Yeah.
I think that one is very, very important, and I agree with you, of course.
It's a very important factor in determining whether we would collaborate with a particular country or not. And as much as we would say funding is important, we understand that funding is one of the major factors in advancing in technology and science. But we also have to appreciate the fact that having the right expertise also matters. So when it comes to expertise, do we have the right kind of expertise to develop science and technology in Africa? Also, do we think having the right expertise increases our chances of getting the right funding from this country I just spoke about? I don't know, please could you answer that?
Well, yeah, so you see, as you have said, the technical know-how is very important.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not only that, for example, I want to start something in agriculture. I must have countries that will come into my mind first, that okay, this country has tried, and then they have tried this, and that, and they have succeeded. Why not to go for them first? So, of course, having the technical know-how, that one is like 70% of the chance of you getting funding, because no person will give you money without knowing, okay, how do you intend to do this? Of course, you have to give them your proposal, and then in that proposal you have to state, I will do this and this. How do you do it? Do you have the expertise, for example, the technical know-how? Do you know how to do it? For example, I will give you an example of one African. He's Nigerian actually, and he applied to study in the US. Then the introductory letter, he said that it was an email to the professor. He said he has done this and that. The professor said, but from what we know, in Africa you don't have this machine. So you see, sometimes it is not like, they might say, okay, you have a first class, you have this, you have that. We can give you the funding, but
The capacity and the capability.
the capacity. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. How do you intend to cope with that? How do you intend to adjust? That's where the knowledge comes in. Yeah, and you must have that one.
Yeah, I think that adding up to that, I think if you look at the Science, Technology and Innovation document of 2024 of the African Union, you would realize that there are some prerequisites which have been stated in the document, and I think you can find this probably on page 27, yes. One of the things it states, and it's one of the core things, is very important, that we need to enhance our technical and professional competencies. So it is very key. I mean, like you mentioned, if you want to probably do something, it is not just about saying you are going to do it. You need to have the knowledge. And I think that this equally has a link with education. So we probably should equally ask ourselves, do we have that capacity, I mean, back home in Africa, to be able to do this? And if we do not, how are we going to, up our game in this particular area to be able to develop the rightful people with the human capital and resource to be able to, meet up the needs of the growing technological needs of our continent and the world at large? But I think that first of all, we need to look inward, look at what we have, how we can use this in the immediate or short term, and see how we can devise means to solve this in the medium to long term, and equally create that avenue and room to mentor other people. And that's, I think, is a bit lagging, because I don't know that, probably, but I would say it's however there seems to be a gap in mentorship in Africa. I don't know. From where I come from, I see this. I don't know for Nigeria, and I don't know for other parts of Africa, but there seems to be, if people know something sometimes, the sharing and even the avenues to do this is not available. So we need to explore these, create the next generation of people who have these, technical know-how and skill to be able to move their agenda forward. And I think this is very important.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we add to that,
Okay.
speaking about expertise, there is August this year, India sent the Chandrayaan 3 spacecraft to this country. Now, my point is, they were able to achieve this because they had the expertise. First of all, that was the major factor. Now, when we talk about expertise, can we really say Africa doesn't have the right expertise? Because because we know that Africans like education. They do everything to get education, and it's in all areas. When Africans go out, they go out. They go all out for education. Now, we have the right expertise, but they don't stay in Africa. If we have the right expertise and they stay in Africa, do you think we could have done this? We could have developed in technology and science? Or do you think we going to get education elsewhere and not applying the knowledge we acquire in Africa is the major reason why we think we don't have the right expertise for this particular issue? Elijah.
Okay.
All right, yeah, so thank you. I've actually been wanting to talk about that. Okay, so basically, right, talking about technological development and all of that, I think we have three great players in this particular sphere. We have the academia, we have the industry, and we have the government. So in Africa currently, as we all know, like most of our educational aspects and educational things we do, they're quite theoretical, and then sometimes we lack the practical aspect. For example, if you see the project work university graduates get to do, like these things are not stuff that are just supposed to be head knowledge or just get stacked up in an office somewhere. There are things that are going to affect the society at large, but the environment isn't too conducive for this project, these ideas they have, right, to find expression in the societies. So I think we need to look into more funding for the academia one, and then as they do more research and all of that, they now get to partner with our industries to see how the ideas these guys have will be put into the society. And this can't be achieved now if the government don't come into play. So the government, of course, would have to formulate policies, would have to create the enabling environment and all of that for all of this to happen. And actually, talking about brain drain, it's actually sad, right? I really don't blame those who leave sometimes. It would be a great joy for them to stay, but the thing is, it's more depressing. It's pathetic. For example, let's say you are a doctor and then a patient comes to you and then this is something you can solve, this is something you can help cure this person, but the machines are not there, or maybe the sophisticated materials and all of those things are not there, and then you see patients dying in your hands. Like, you're going to be frustrated. The whole noble career you're practicing and all of that, it's going to even kill you at the end of the day because you have passion for this, and then you see your patients dying. So I think for most doctors and most people who are living, it's like, why should I stay and keep on experiencing all of this? And so I think, yeah, the government has a great role to play in ensuring that they build that enabling environment for people to stay. And then secondly, I think that we need to expose more of our young ones and our kids also to technology, and they should have something they're aspiring up to. So for example, you have some scenarios where when kids are growing up, right, they have a certain age. Okay, you're not going to use telephone until this certain age, or you're not going to have access to some of these things until you reach this certain age. And then I actually saw a very funny picture online just a few weeks ago. There were, I think, kids who were like 6 or 7 years in the church praying, which is not bad, which is good and really nice. But then they screenshot that particular picture and then they brought a different picture from Japan where you had 6 or 7 year old kids. They were sitting on the computer. So they were like, in Africa, this is what kids are taught to do, like just to pray all day. But in as much as prayer is really good, like they have to balance everything up. So I think these kids need to be exposed to some of these things from an early age, and then so when they grow, they have something to aspire to. Because sometimes when parents restrict them from using all of these things, they go to school, and then let's say you have just one computer for about 100 students. So they're just gathering around it, and then what are they showing them basically? Oh, this is keyboard, this is a motherboard, this is monitor screen. It doesn't really help our future. So I think, yeah, we need to expose our young ones more to what's happening in the world. They need to understand that their competition is not just Togo. Their competition is not just maybe Kenya or one African country. It's a global village. We're competing with kids from Japan, from America, from Russia, all over the world. So yeah, we need to expose them more. I've never doubted the expertise we have in Africa. For example, in 1999, this guy received a Nobel Prize award. I think he's from Egypt. Ahmed Zewal. He did some projects. He did some works about femtochemistry. I think it's about atomic like structures, molecules, and how they react, and all of those things. He has that. He's not the only one. We have, for example, Philip Emeagwali. He is popularly referred to as the father of modern internet and all of these things. So you see, we have 1,001 of those Philip Emeagwali. So we have 1,001 of those guys in Africa, but they need the right environment to blossom and flourish.
Thank you. Very briefly, Adamo, please could you tell us where you think Africa stands today in technological advancement, and how is Africa contributing to the solutions to the problems of and challenges of the world, like climate change, health issues, pandemics, environmental disasters, and biotechnological risk? How do you think Africa is contributing to the solutions to these problems, and where do you think Africa as a whole stands today?
Oh, well, if we can say sincerely, Africa is just like the sick man of the world, because everything that is bad, it is, related to Africa, while all the good ones, all the good things are not related to Africa. So yeah, we can see that science and technology is still developing in Africa, and then the governments are doing their best, even though sometimes they don't really, enact the policies. But still, actually, yeah, we are getting there, because the world is becoming a global village. If you are not doing it, it is becoming, clear that you are not doing your job. So our governments, I believe, they are really trying to see how they can help ameliorate a lot of problems that we are facing in Africa. But still, even with that, we need to work harder, actually, because by 2050, it is projected that African population will reach 2.5 billion people. So without food security, and then we cannot be able to feed our populace. And then for us to attain, such production of large food, we need to incorporate technology, biotechnology especially, that you can produce multiple, tons of food from just small biomass. Yeah, so I think Africa we are still lagging behind, but we believe we'll catch up the rest.
Thank you. So we have our last question for the day. Every panelist is going to say something, just your opinion on where you think Africa would be. So when and how can Africa have a similar achievement? This is going to be, what do you hope to see in Africa in coming years or decades? Where do you think Africa will stand in relation to science and technology in the next 50 years? And if you would go first.
Quite interesting. I think that in the next 50 years, Africa may still be how it is if we do not make deliberate attempts to, with all the policies and everything we put in place, to achieve them. Because this particular document of the African Union was enacted somewhere in 2003 in, I think, Lagos, I guess. But we are in 2024 and most of the things are still not achieved. So if we do not make that deliberate attempt, I think there is nowhere we can go to. But I will still say that it is possible. We can dare, we can do it. And some of the areas that I think are priority, first is we need to digitalize our agriculture. Very, very important. And I see this being a solution to solve most of the problems in Africa, to even generate a lot of funds for us, because everywhere in Africa is arable. I mean, you can grow somewhere everywhere. There's something everywhere in Africa, and all year round. Unlike, for instance, here Now it's winter, and you could see all the trees are shedding their leaves. Nothing can grow now. I mean, even if there are crops that are going to grow, it's not that going to be much because it's just going to be a greenhouse or something. So we need to put in a lot of, we need to be prepared. We need to be deliberate and do something in this particular area of digitalized agriculture. I think we probably need to look at telemedicine as well. We need to probably try to digitalize our education as well, because in as much as we are talking about all these things, it has to do with if the people have the rightful and technical know-how and skill, and if people have access to quality healthcare. So if we can put in place telemedicine, even when we are not able to reach people with regards to physical structures in some hinterlands or in remote areas, they could still have access to some of these technologies. And again, in Ghana, we have already instituted a method or a system where we can use drones to fly medications and blood supplies and basically stuff in medicine to hinterlands where they don't have some of these things. So if we're able to up our game in some of these areas, I think it's going to be great.
Thank you very much, Elijah.
Alright, yeah, thank you. My final words actually. I think the benefits of science and technology, right, it's all encompassing. So it gets to affect every sphere of national life. I think Hanif rightly mentioned digitalizing agriculture and all of that. It's quite really pathetic to still know that, for example, a country like Belgium, I think the size of Belgium, right, is not, should I say, 1/10 of Nigeria's size, but the agricultural output that they have, the benefits they're having from agriculture is much more, it's far more than what Nigeria produces, what Nigeria puts out there. So you see, it's really sad because Africa has over 70%, he talked about it, of arable land in the world. And then having that massive land, we're still not able to, for example, it's you hear some countries, oh, we're going to send grains to Africa. That should be absurd, sending grains to Africa. Africa should be able to feed itself and feed the world. So I think, a goal without a time frame is just like a dream. So our leaders and all parties need to come together to really set goals, realistic goals. What do we want for ourselves by 2050, by so time? What do we want to achieve? What kind of Africa do we want to see? So when they set those realistic goals and then they get to work together, I think the future is quite bright for Africa.
Thank you very much. Adam?
So actually Africa has everything it needs to thrive. The resources, human, resources, both human and material resources. The only thing we are lacking is the leadership. With a good leader, in 20 years we can transform Africa. That's all we need. Good leaders who are capable, who have the African in their hearts. You understand? So if we have our own policy that we pursue, of course Africa will be great in just 20 years. Because you can see what is happening in this country. For example, after the collapse of Soviet Union, a lot of things were really bad here, but we just one person on leadership, you understand, on the seat of leadership, and you see that a lot of things have changed with time, you understand. So in Africa, if we can be able to get good leaders that pursue African policy, it is like the way Jay Shankar said, when they said, is India sitting on the fence? They said no, India is not sitting on the fence, whether between East and West. They have their own policy and they are pursuing their own policy. They don't listen to anyone. So if you have leaders like that who can, put Africa first, of course, what is there? Because see, it is really interesting to see that in Africa, even with this, we are lacking, but a lot of infrastructure in Africa, they are really up to standard. Yeah, because if you are watching some classes of Harvard, MIT, our classes in Gombe State University, some of our classes are better than those in Harvard, the lecture theaters. So it is not that we don't have the capacity or we don't have the infrastructure, it's just the leadership. How can we maintain? How can we continue? How can we make it, continue? That's all we need in Africa. And I believe Africa will be great.
Okay, from what you've just said, maintenance, but what do you think the government can do to maintain the already existing infrastructures?
Funding, supervision, inspection. You understand? Yeah.
But do you think the government already has this funding, or they have to get it from somewhere else?
We have everything we need. We need the will.
And priority,
Yeah.
and we need to set our priorities right.
Yeah, if the government has the will, that's all. Africa is great.
Thank you very much. That is the conclusion of our questions for today. We really appreciate you guys for coming on the show today. We appreciate your tenacity and the will to. You guys really delivered today, and we are really, really grateful for that.
Thank you.
We hope to see you in consequent episodes.
Sure.
To our viewers online, we appreciate you for joining us today, and about the technical glitches, we are very sorry. In the next previous episodes, subsequent episodes, we hope to do better and give you the best we can. We finally come to the conclusion of the third episode of Bantaba. Thank you very much for joining us again today. We wish you a happy holiday and happy new year in advance. Have fun, guys. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
See you in 2024.
Hello guys, we just concluded this episode of Bantaba. If you're watching this video, it means you already know how it went. I can bet you had a great time. We will be here next week, same time, same venue. Stay tuned. It's your favorite host, Christina. Bye.